Oh, thank you, Scott, for giving me the opportunity.
Now, the river had been running well below projections. Things have been adjusted, obviously, with what's happening with the flows out of the releases from the core that we just actually spent a few minutes talking about here, a little bit about what was happening from Darling. So give us the very latest on what we know as far as what you anticipate those projections and the ultimate crest to be.
Sure, Scott, I can do that real quick. Essentially, I heard the caller talk a little bit about the river has been sort of underperforming compared to the expectations on our AHAPS graphic, and that is very true. What is happening here is that the model that we use to produce those graphics, it can't account for the river losing water, so to speak, in the Minot area. And physically, that's what is taking place right now. The dikes in some areas have been overtopped, and they are currently taking water out of the river and putting it onto the former dry side of the dikes. And in doing so, the rise at the gauge at Broadway Bridge has been slowed, and that's going to continue probably yet for a good portion of today. As the backside of those dikes start filling up, more of that water will stay in the channel and be registered by the gauge. Now, with respect to the releases out of Lake Darling, every day that we're going through this current flood event, we get more data, or we get updated data from what's happening up in Canada, what's happening at Sherwood, and we have to translate that into what's going into Lake Darling for the Corps of Engineers. Now, what is happening up in Canada right now, that we're finally starting to see a little bit of relief out of the dams. The Rafferty and Boundary dams, which are where much of this water is originating from, have finally started to taper off just a little bit. However, there's still an awful large amount of water that is in the system and moving towards North Dakota. And what we're discovering is that the river is moving that water considerably faster than we had expected, much faster than what we had seen with other flood events. And the reason we think that's probably true now is that as the river has come up, of course it is pretty much valley-wide, all the way from Rafferty Dam by Estevan to the upper portion of Lake Darling at this point. And as the river came up so high in those areas, it is now shortcutting where the river would normally meander through a mile of countryside. It might meander for a mile and a half or a mile and three-quarter. At this point, it's cutting across those countrysides, and it's shortening its travel time considerably. So we're seeing that water manifest itself in Lake Darling faster than what our models had initially anticipated. And now, what does that do to Lake Darling? The question what that does to Lake Darling is it forces their hand to some extent. We were hopeful when we started seeing this happening a few days ago that Lake Darling would still be going down as of yesterday, and that maybe today, late today, we would see it level off and start going up. That is not the case. Lake Darling started seeing all that flood water from the Sherwood area, and it turned around Lake Darling yesterday. So that is forcing the Corps to rebalance the model as to what they can hold in Lake Darling when it has to be released. And so they are essentially moving the release schedule forward or nearer in time. And right now they're releasing about 18,000 CFS as of noon today. That travel time to Minot normally is about 36 hours. Now we expect that travel time to be shorter, somewhere in the 24-hour time frame, or maybe even a little bit less. So the river at Minot will start responding very quickly, like I say, once it fills in that backwater area. And we're eventually going to get to releases perhaps of 26,000 CFS tomorrow, early tomorrow. And as we get into tomorrow and have more data once again to assess the water, the volume of water moving towards Darling, that number again may have to go up, and we're thinking 28,000 CFS. And what this translates to at Minot, I always like to tell people that flow is what fills the dam, but it's really stage is what overtops dikes, and then eventually sends water into your basement. So looking at stages for the Minot Broadway Bridge, right now our best estimate is about 1564.5 feet, perhaps a little bit less if we get extra conveyance in on the back side of that dike than we're estimating right now, but right around 1564.5 feet.
And when would you anticipate that crest?
That stage, now we still have to fill in the backside of the dike, but the model suggests we will see that probably around late on the 25th, which is Saturday, going into Sunday. And clearly, I think by late Sunday, we should be seeing the full effect of that.
And how long does that crest stay in place? How long of that stage would you end up having at Minot?
Well, right now, our estimate is that, and this is still a little ways out, so like I say, I would caveat this by saying as every day passes, this estimate is going to change. We expect those stages to hold true for 3 to 4 days. And then after that, we'll see perhaps some lessening of the inflows to Darling, and we'll start seeing the water levels decreasing a bit as we go forward from there. But overall, what's really important is how long are we going to be above, a stage that keeps the housing area wet and everything, because it will be important to people, how soon they can get back into work, and that get back into work on a property. And that I really would not expect until, regrettably, probably sometime around the second week of July, I suppose.
So you're talking about, literally these areas that are ultimately going to be inundated, remaining inundated for another 3-4 weeks yet.
Yeah, that's absolutely possible. And of course, it's going to depend on, how much water. If you're a little bit on the higher side, it could be sooner than that, clearly. Those homes that will have the deepest water around them and next to them, those are the homes, of course, that, that'll be at that end of 2-week time frame before there's any real reasonable chance of seeing them get a chance to get in there and work on them.
Everybody is searching for some good news in this situation, and obviously there's not much of it to go around right now because, again, everything you've described, it's just bad getting worse. The sliver of silver lining here is that obviously the projections are coming down mostly because, unfortunately, the river is spilling into more and more areas outside the bank. Is there any potential that the crest could be revised down if the river keeps coming in under projections and inundating more areas that are bringing that level down? Do you see any good news on the horizon here?
Regrettably, I really don't. The problem is that we already have the water in the system, and so we know we're working with kind of a bare minimum of enough water to force releases as early tomorrow of that 26,000 CFS. And so once that is out of Lake Darling, the show is going to keep moving down the river, and is going to be, creating lots of flooding and, a lot of pain in the area. So maybe duration-wise is maybe the better way to talk about it, but as far as the peak at this point, I do think it's going to be in that 26 to 29,000 CFS range, which will be substantially less than, of course, what's coming in at Sherwood, but far more so than what is necessary to create problems in this part of the state.
You just used a figure 26 to 29,000. Do you see 29,000 as being the potential high end on the releases?
Well, 26 to 29 is because the release, if they have to go to 28,000 out of Lake Darling, we still have a little bit of inflow from the Des Lacs River.
I see.
And, not a lot, but some coming in from the Cooley's area. So by the time it gets to Minot, it could be up to about 29,000 CFS.
How about on the?
I think that's
I understand.
Reasonable to be on the higher end.
How about, Alan, on the forecast side? I mean, obviously this largely has been caused by unwanted precipitation at the worst possible time. What does the forecast look like for additional rain through these next 2-3 weeks of a crucial time here?
Well, that's a good question. You really hit the nail on the head with how severe the weather has been this past 7-8 weeks throughout the Souris River Basin. We've been getting large, aerially, very expansive storms that have covered the ground with 2 to 4 inches of rain. Those have been really quite frequent. They've been coming through every 4 to 7 days, and that's what's pushed the system to the full brink of storage. And then it was that last one really large storm that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, looking forward, it's kind of a day late and dollar short. But looking forward, we look to be, over the next 6 to 14 days, finally approaching something that is more seasonal, normal for us in the Souris River Basin.
Yeah, exactly. Why? When?
It doesn't mean we won't be seeing rain, but we're not talking about widespread 3 to 4 inch rainstorms now. We're looking out and we're saying more seasonal, probably half-inch, 3/4 inch storms are going to be more than normal. Local thunderstorms that are pretty small, a couple miles wide, 5 miles wide, that dump 2 to 3 inches of rain. But these really huge storms that have plagued the area this spring, for the time being, we appear to have at least a 10-day window where we're not expecting that.
I knew if I extended my questioning long enough, I'd find a little bit of silver lining and good news. So thankfully, we have found that, at least that we're back into normal as far as precip is concerned. Alan, thanks for the update. We appreciate it very much.
No problem, Scott. Anytime.